Hello, my name is Gonzalo Fernandez. I work as product manager in the business process management in GeneXus. And today I want to tell you a bit about the new stuff of this 18th version in terms of the BPM suite. In this version, our focus was on the redesign of the UI for the different clients, for end users. But before we talk about those changes, I want to tell you a bit about the original motivation. As you know, or you will see in these talks, one of the main focuses of the GeneXus 18 version is Unanimo, the new design system. The goal of this design system is to provide our clients with consistency in all the applications generated with GeneXus, whether it's forms or patterns, satellite GeneXus components such as the chatbot generator, even GAM, so all the security aspects, and the BPM suite. All of this will be very consistent based on this Unanimo design system that will be maintained by GeneXus in the same way that it was created, and it will be automatic. So going back to the client GX Flow design aspect, before we get there, I want to give you an overview of the evolution of our different clients. The origins of GX Flow, so what we're talking about are the 6X version, which is more than 20 years old. The first GX Flow client was based on work panels. So they were traditional Windows forms that were back then what GeneXus had available apart from the original generators, which were for AS400. You had the Visual Fox Pro generator. That was the first one that we supported. And then the Visual Basic generator was added, and then the Java generator. Okay, so this allowed us to support not only Windows platforms, but also other kinds of architecture. Also, the use of the Java generator made it possible for us to use a feature that would allow work panels to be run as applets, which was a first approach to becoming what is the web environment. Then we got to the 7.5 version, and this version GeneXus showed the web generators and the web panel objects to design those applications. And this is how a first web client, native client, was born. In the 9.0, we updated the user interface with some aesthetic changes, even though the user experience was pretty much the same. And in the X version, we had a significant change. In this version, GeneXus incorporated a concept which is user controls. User controls are an extensibility mechanism offered by GeneXus that allows you to define controls that are based on JavaScript libraries that may be implemented by third parties. So in that case, we implemented our user controls that gave us the features that we needed, and we developed a GX Flow client that was customized using that power. And that is how we have different controls that, for instance, allow us to have a dynamic layout that allow us to move or collapse regions, drag them, and especially a very powerful grid that has features and functionalities such as filtering with each column that the order of each column should be executed in the server, not in the current web page, which is what GeneXus used to support back then, and more trivial things such as, for instance, hiding or viewing different columns. Then we go to the 15th version. At this point, it is explicitly manifested this concern that we have for our user interface to be consistent with the generated applications. As you could see in the previous version, the use of these user controls generated a certain difference between our client, the BPM client, and the applications that GeneXus was generating in a predetermined way. So this was making or creating some differences that meant that our clients had two options. They could either use their own controls to have everything more uniform in terms of the application, or they could use what we call a custom client, that I will be telling you a bit more about that, to customize their own client. Okay? So in this client, in this 15 version, what we did was, even though we maintained user controls, we masked them in such a way that, aesthetically speaking, they resemble quite a lot forms and grids that are automatically generated by GeneXus. Okay, so even in this version, it is already clear that we are concerned about keeping a certain consistency between our clients, our satellite GeneXus applications, with the applications generated by GeneXus. As I was telling you, many of our clients wanted to have a high customizing degree, which is why it was not possible for them to use our standard client. In that case, our clients would program their own client in a customized way, depending on their needs, to give the features and the aesthetics that they needed. So for that, us as a base would distribute a client that we call custom client, and that was a client that could be distributed in an XPZ form, or be downloaded from a GX server distribution delivery, and they used that as a basis to customize in whichever way they needed. So now I'm going to show you a few specific customizing examples made by our clients. So this is the case of the coronavirus UI plan, which is the application that was used by healthcare providers to get all the reports of symptoms given by users. And in this case, well, the aesthetics are quite different, but the way in which you prioritize tasks is different because it depends on how serious symptoms may be. In this case, you have, for example, the Panama Canal example that you can see that you add new columns with more information. You have a menu with applications that belong to the client, and also how you prioritize tasks depends on basically the logistics of boats and ships and how they want to prioritize entry into the canal. So another example that I wanted to show you is the case of the Blumenau municipality, which is a municipality that customized their own inbox with the data that they needed, creating specific actions and so on. So let's take a look at some of the disadvantages that the old interfaces have that I've shown you so far. So in those old UI versions, when you were using user controls, they were based on a third-party library, a third-party JavaScript library that now has been discontinued. The user experience when using that client, if compared to the generated applications, as I was mentioning before, would result in a lack of consistency amongst applications. So previous user interfaces could not support full Ajax, they were not responsive either, which means that the size of the interface would not be adjusted automatically to different screen sizes. For example, mobile phones, well, you couldn't do that with those interfaces. And all of this resulted in the fact that many of our clients would end up choosing that custom client, which they could customize, leaving aside our native client or the standard client that we were distributing. So we got to this version 18. In this version, all the different screens were created from scratch with full Ajax support, needless to say. This is responsive, so they will be sensitive to context of the different screen sizes. And also something that is quite important, 100% of that application is generated with standard GeneXus controls. So you're removing the old user controls, and of course, all the design and the aesthetics of the application are based on Unanimo design system. So for example, here what we have is the client, you have the main screen with the inbox, and all the changes were made seeking not to lose functionality. So we eliminated user controls, but our goal was to have the extra functionality that was supported by those user controls to remain like that. This is about what I told you in terms of having the order still available in the server, that you can still filter columns. That was a bit about this version's whole idea. So I'm going to show you a quick demo where I'm going to show you how we can customize our application, and that those changes that I made will automatically be reflected in the BPM GX Flow client. And all this is going to look very consistent. Okay, so in this demo, the idea is to show you a bit about how to customize and use Unanimo to modify both generated applications and see how that affects the interface in a case of a native GXFlow client. So I'm going to start with a very easy process, which is a vacation request. And then there is that goes through a manager that is going to authorize or reject that vacation. So here I have defined a design system that is called GXFlow demo that is empty. And I'm going to start the demo with the objects as it is. So inheriting everything, it's going to behave just as if it had nothing but Unanimo. You can see that here, that the default style is GXFlow demo in the properties. And so we're going to run the application as it goes. This is the predetermined default way. So this is the application's login. Let's go here to the main menu. Here you have a demo user, and I'm going to execute this vacation request, and I'm going to ask to be on vacation from the 17th of October until the 28th. And the type is vacations. I have different kinds. I'm going to choose this one. I'm going to click on confirm, and I'm going to click on next. Now that's going to get to the manager. I'm going to log out and log in as manager. And you're going to execute that as manager. You're going to see the request that starts here. And this person is going to say, sorry, too many days. It's going to request approval, and they're going to say reject reason because it's too many days, so I can't authorize it. So I need to uncheck this box. So I will reject it. I click on next. And if I go back to the previous user, the one that made the request originally, if you go to inbox, you will see that this is back and it was rejected. So I'm going to go now to the GXFlow design system. As you can see here, it's called GXFlow demo. It's a design system, and because it is empty now, it's behaving as if it were Unanimo. So now you're going to see the teeny tiny changes that I'm going to make, which are just differences in primary and secondary colors. I'm going to copy that. And I'm going to build here. So with these changes, what I'm going to see is that both the application that I'm generating, that is the transaction associated to that task, that is this one here, as well as the GXFlow client, you're going to see how this takes that new design. Okay, so that's done. We're going to refresh the resources. And here we can see how you can observe some of the changes, some of the aesthetic changes. For example, this is the GAMS login for you to see that also this component was updated. And you can see that this is the GXFlow client. This is the home page where you have some stats. You have the inbox. And as you can see, I changed my design system. I made teeny tiny changes again, just to have some aesthetic changes, aiming to modify my application, but that also affected all the different components that you're using. In this case, for example, the GXFlow client. So this is the application generated by GeneXus from that transaction, and it also takes that design. So all the generated applications component, the form, the GAM, the patterns work with, all of that will have a consistency when it comes to user experience and user interface. In this case, for instance, I'm gonna make that vacation request shorter, so fewer days. Here I click on confirm. I click on next. I'm gonna log out and go back to the manager's demo user. And here you can see again the request. You see that it's not so many days, and now I'm going to approve it. I'm going to delete the reject reason. Now, yeah, click on confirm, and vacations have been accepted so that that person can go on leave, and the process is over, which you can see here. It appears as completed. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you in terms of how Unanimo is designed in such a way that all your interface and all the satellite components that you create with GeneXus will behave exactly in the same way. And finally, I want to show you something in terms of what I was mentioning related to responsiveness. And you can see how the interface, well, you can change the different sizes. So you will see how it looks on a mobile device and how size adapts to that screen. So yeah, you see that you have a burger menu, and now you have this GXFlow application, absolutely responsive, which is sensitive to the different types of devices and different screen sizes. Okay, so going back to our presentation, leaving aside the standard client, now we have a custom client that is the one that our clients are using whenever they want to have more flexibility to customize their applications. And in this case, also, we changed the custom client. Also, the whole design was responsive. It has become responsive with full AJAX support, and it also supports Unanimo, our design system. So between the native client and the generated custom client, which is predetermined by GeneXus, they look very similar. In terms of the mobile client, which is something that I haven't shown you, we have a native client for mobile to support Android and iOS. And it was redesigned using Unanimo. So you can take a look, for example, at the inbox here with the two different styles supported by Unanimo, which is light and dark mode. I didn't mention that for other clients, but they also support these two modes. And this is as far as the client redesign is concerned in terms of the BPM suite. But what about the process modeler? Okay, this is now a bit more related to the development environment. So I want to tell you a bit about the evolution over time of the process modeler. Originally in the 7.5 version, which is the first version where we had an editor, you may be asking yourselves what happened before, because I showed you that we had a client in our 6th version, and well, in that case we didn't have a graphic designer to make all these diagrams. So the task descriptions and so on, that was done transactionally. So in the 7.5 version, we incorporated this new diagram editor, which was implemented through the activity diagram UML, which was the diagram that we believed that resembled the most those flow diagrams that we were using. Then we evolved, and in GeneXus X, we redesigned the interface. So we updated the development environment, and in the Evolution 1 version, we do have some significant changes because we left aside the UML activity diagram and we replaced that with the process modeling standard of BPMN, which stands for Business Process Model and Notation, which is a standard that was first developed by the BPMI, which is the Business Process Management Initiative, which is a non-profit. And then it merged with the OMG, which stands for Object Management Group. And then it was modified, and in 2011, the second version was launched, which is basically our current reference version. So in terms of the current version of the modeler, it has not gone through significant changes except for the completion of this BPMN second version with some elements and artifacts that were missing that have now been incorporated. Just to wrap up, I would like to show you a bit about what we're going to be working on in the future. So as a matter of fact, we are working on some of these things as we speak. You will see that GeneXus in this version is incorporating the Angular generator. So needless to say, we will incorporate a client that will be compatible with this generator. Another important thing that we're going to be working on is to replace the process modeler in GeneXus in the Windows version, and we're going to use the process modeler of the web version. So we're going to replace that, and we're going to use that instead. Another thing that we are working on is in developing a new standard that is called TMN, which is Decision Model and Notation. That is a standard specifically applied to write, create, and visualize decision-making processes in a company in such a way that it will be more visible. And another thing that we will be working on is enhancing our dynamic forms. This gives you the possibility to define forms in runtime with our client, which is available, it has been available for some versions. That's going to be more powerful. And finally, the web process modeler that, as I said, we're going to replace is also going to be incorporated in our end user client, in our web client, which is going to give us the possibility to manage all the business process from the web. Yeah, so from defining the form, defining diagrams and applications and so on, and all these decisions, they will be all made from the web client. And well, that is going to give us the possibility of moving the workflow and the process management aspect to a SaaS architecture. SaaS is software as a service, and the idea is to offer all the BPM solution through the cloud. Yeah. Needless to say, none of this means that we're going to replace the current design with GeneXus. GeneXus is going to still be a key aspect for the development of BPM applications and mission-critical applications. But this does mean that we will have the possibility to develop BPM applications on the cloud that will not require that much complexity, let's say. Okay, so what are the advantages of having all the management of these processes on the cloud? Well, the typical advantages of a SaaS platform, which is, for instance, that you have a solution that is 100% available, that can be in an Amazon cloud, that is going to ensure robustness, and the fact that it's going to be available 24/7, that it can be accessed by different members in the organization, that will be perhaps distributed geographically, around the world, accessing it remotely, and always using the latest available version, the latest technology with lower maintenance costs and so on. So, well, I really hope that this talk has been useful, and let's see you again.